New York Forward grant opportunity for the Springs Business District. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. So I'm here today to share some information about the New York Forward program. It's a grant opportunity through the Department of State, and I want to talk about some projects that could be eligible, previous planning efforts like the Hamlet studies and ongoing community engagement through citizens advisory committees have called out some challenges and started a conversation around opportunities or solutions to those challenges, specifically in the focus area of Springs is what we're looking for this project. Okay, great. So I think we're good for the next slide. Thanks, Patrick. So New York Forward is aimed towards smaller towns and hamlets. It's a partner to the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. It's for smaller hamlets that have a unique character, mom and pop shops, a certain small town charm and heritage, lower density buildings with low stories. So we felt New York Forward was the better fit for this specific project. So New York Forward is planning to give awards of $4.5 million to applications that include a variety of projects that all contribute to revitalizing or reinvigorating an area. These can include public improvement projects like walkability, green infrastructure, streetscaping, direct assistance to local businesses for things like renovations, elevating historical or cultural aspects of the area, among other related projects. Two of these awards are anticipated to be given out on Long Island and to communities that meet an eligibility criteria of being pro-housing certified. So the town just recently received that just this past August. So we just met this eligibility for the application window. So the Hamlet studies and spring CAC meetings, they kind of pointed us in a direction of general public feelings and some challenges and opportunities in the area. An action item for anyone interested in the public is going to be a public survey that's currently out to help gather general input and feedback on the application's direction. If the town's application to New York Forward is awarded, there's going to be a fresh planning process specific to the scope of this project to raise or revisit ideas and make sure anything implemented is supported by the community. The state would provide us with a technical assistance consultant and project manager to facilitate stakeholder engagement. Next slide. So any potential projects funded under this program would need to be in the designated focus area or very nearby and adjacent to it. And putting together the boundaries of this New York Forward area, we tried to really call out the heart of Springs. So it includes some of the historic district of Ashua Hall, Springs Library, Springs Presbyterian Church, among other buildings, as well as Springs School, and then the small businesses around Fort Pond Boulevard. It's adjacent to local waterways and scenic areas of Accabonac Harbor and Pussy's Pond, and it's also surrounded by a medium density residential district. So we think these different attributes of the area really contribute to the sense of place in Springs and the functions or key assets of the community. Some of the potential challenges previously identified are around traffic and parking. Some wider town issues are housing and focuses on the local economy and cost of living. So for this project, we really hope to promote safety on roadways, preserve historical and cultural buildings in the hamlet for that sense of place, and support local businesses. The cost of living is high, and so is rent and the cost of doing business. So hopefully providing some support would have this trickling down effect to members and visitors of the community and consumers in the area. More specific ways to address those goals may include some projects. So we're not limited to this list. It would actually be great if this was a much longer list. So we're very open to more ideas. It's a big funding source, so we'd rather cast a wide net and oversubmit the amount available to us. The state ultimately will work with us on making decisions of which projects that we submit to actually end up funding. So some projects listed here, Ashua Hall and Springs Library, are historic buildings that are in need of some building upgrades. Preserving the integrity of those buildings, help to offer community programming, a space for events. Regularly held farmers markets are located in this area, and they have a visual character. Safety and walkability improvements related to pedestrians, cyclists, or parking, looking at ease of navigation and safe connectivity from Fort Pond Boulevard to the historic district and possibly the school, and a small project fund to support local businesses. So businesses would be able to submit information on doing equipment purchases like an HVAC upgrade, or doing exterior improvements, facade enhancements, or interior enhancements as well. Just trying to make this area a place that people want to visit and spend time here. Next slide. So really we want the call of action for this presentation for someone that's interested to fill out a public survey that we have, especially if you live or work in the area or close to it. We definitely want your opinion. It's only 9 questions. 3 of those are your contact information. So we tried to keep it short enough that we want to get some good feedback, but don't want to take up anyone's time too much. We just want to help inform this application in the direction that we're going in. When we're talking about the assets of a community, the most important asset is the people in it. So we want to make sure that whatever we're proposing has the community support. Springs is a very special place to people, and we want to receive direction and input from this very early on stage. In Springs and other hamlets of the community, members of the community really feel like a part of their identity is attributed to where they are. And in some cases, it goes back family generations. So we want to be sensitive to that, of keeping the community's character, but also noticing some of the challenges that even prior to me starting this presentation were being discussed. And if there's a grant opportunity here that we can come in and help remediate some of these issues, we want to jump on doing that. Okay. And so although we want to start some of the engagement now, also a local planning committee was recently formed to help discuss and think through this application. But if East Hampton Town was awarded, what would happen is a kickoff of an approximately 9-month-long planning process of coming in and redefining the vision, the goals, and the strategies and projects that are compatible with the community vision. So that would be working with the state to do a strategic investment plan, would be the deliverable of that stakeholder engagement. So we would probably start with a visioning process of where we are now, where we want to be, and collect a shared direction and framework to move in, and doing a community needs assessment. Okay, yeah, I think those are my main notes. I guess some key takeaways is that now is not the only time for engagement, but we did want to begin it now. We think this is an important opportunity, and we have some good ideas that were raised in previous CSE meetings, planning studies, and by other organizations, and that we hope the focus of this is improving safety in the area, helping small businesses, and assisting nonprofits and community buildings.
Well, if you don't mind, Kathy, I want to say thank you, Sam. This came about fairly quickly in a liaison report I was giving a few weeks ago about the Spring CAC and road safety concerns. Sam, who helps us with grants, found this source of funding that we might be eligible for, thanks to our participation as a pro-housing community, and that was really appealing to me. I think it's appropriate that we're talking about potentially looking at $4.5 million of non-local tax funding for projects that are very important to the town. I'm not somebody who thinks just spending money on anything just to spend it's a good idea. But I think anybody looking, who lives in Springs like I do, or visits Springs, will appreciate what a lovely place it is. And I think even though we may encounter different opinions about what could be done there, whether it's, business, road safety, environmental, I think almost anybody can think of something that a good use that money could be put towards. And that's where we are right now. This is supposed to be a collaborative effort. I want to hear from everybody, people who have their own ideas, think our ideas are imperfect. But right now what we're trying to do is secure the funding. So as Sam said, we want to cast a wide net with a lot of different ideas. I've reached out to the fire department, who has some needs there. Ashwag Hollow Community Center has some needs. We have our own historic structures, road safety, parking safety. There's a lot of different things out there that I think this money could be used for. And Sam has been really, really helpful to sort of steer our needs that I'm sort of describing and liaison as a liaison to Springs to match it up to fit the grant that the state is trying to, that the state is offering. I think the fact that the town has done hamlet studies, that we've invested in infrastructure like the Old Stone highway culvert that's happening, the Pussy's Pond revitalization, septic improvements, historic structures. We're already investing in these things, and the fact that there might be a source of funding outside of local taxes, I think is super appealing. So right now, we have October 18th as the deadline. We want to get as much information as quickly as possible from as many people as possible to try to put together a winning application. And from that point, there will be very, very extensive planning. As Sam said, we've already formed a committee. I've talked publicly about this in this forum to Spring CAC. We want it to be very inclusive, and that will only continue and grow. So please reach out to me, to Sam, fill out the survey. And it's a very exciting opportunity. And again, I thank Sam for all of her work.
Appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. We obviously look through this at different lenses that we all kind of communicate to. So for me, I kind of see like the possibility of lifeline facilities in there. I'm like, you know what, that maybe that's not a terrible idea for Springs to have some kind of hub that has a generator that people can go to for power or something in a storm in that realm. But overall, I really like what you're doing here. The other one that kind of stood out to me personally was kind of the business piece. And I think, one has to be careful slightly in that realm of just promoting one business. So like maybe it's kind of celebrating a wider group of businesses in this district. I know that helps as a businessman, but ways to kind of draw that I think would be great. The other thing I think that's great that you're doing with this that I think is very helpful is the public survey piece. I think that we hear from certain people in the community, and actually widening our scope and kind of who we listen to can be very, very helpful to get some scope of what the needs out there might truly be. So great job, and I look forward to seeing this moving forward.
David?
Sure. So I think one of the keystones here is that we're appropriately placed or higher in priority right now because of what the supervisor was able to accomplish most recently, being pro-housing on there. Moving that ahead then too. So I think it would be almost foolish if we didn't try to go find funding for things that we think is all potentially needed. Assistance with our businesses, assistances with public safety, road connectivity, public safety being for children. A lot of children walk this way to go to school on there. If we can blend that balance of design with our historical districts, areas of our right-of-ways on there, working with the business district, getting kids to school safely, and then to potentially add some of the needs for the businesses to not expand, but to gentrify. Is that the right word? No? Update? No. Strengthen. I appreciate that. Strike that. I think that's something that's great. Now, nothing here is guaranteed. But again, without taking, the worst action is no action. This gives us an action to go find if we can get this and move it ahead, and then we'll have much more talk. And I agree with what Tom said. The survey out there to get more voices in there in this area then too. Yeah, please go for it. So I'm full support of seeing what we can do. Congratulations, Ian, for getting this moved forward with Sam.
Well, we haven't done anything yet. We're
Well, you're moving
trying.
it, so, yeah.
I do want to say, well, one thing in response to, Tom is entirely right, that we don't want to, and I'm very sensitive about this as a person in the town council. You don't want to pick winners. You don't want to say, okay, this business gets all of this money. The idea is to, and this was highlighted in the Hamlet study, that there's a couple of neighborhood business areas that could just use some improvements, whether it's safety or lighting or whatever it is. And that's why we're trying to be so public about this, is because however that is allocated. Now, a lot of this money is going to be for the town itself or nonprofits, fire department, things like that. To the extent that we do, make funds accessible to businesses where there would be some sort of a match, we want to do it, cast a wide net and make sure that those improvements not only are benefiting the business itself, but also the community as a whole. I see a synergy here, but I think that's a very important thing to bring up. And I just want to, say that we are contemplating that throughout our process. And I think we'll have to make sure we keep a focus on that.
So what I wanted to mention is two things. One is, how do we get the word out for folks to take the survey? And then if we could just talk a little bit about some projects to consider. So first, getting the word out. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe we could approach the school, if you haven't already done so, Ian, to see, they've probably got a Google group that they send out to their parents all the time. If we could get the survey pushed out that way. We've got the Academic Protection Committee, the Springs Improvement Society, Springs Library. They all have lists. Springs Presbyterian Church, may have a list. And I'm going to make a personal appeal to Mr. Buddha, who's here in our audience, who we know has a mailing list. David, if you would put out to your folks, that would be awesome. So that's the first thing, right? Because we want to get as many people, because I'm sure in the application, if you come back and said, 15 people took the survey versus 1,500 people took the survey, it carries a lot of weight. So that's the first thing. Second thing, with projects to consider, I know Jeannie had mentioned with the blacksmith shop that we're going out for RFP on that for the exterior. I don't know if there's other projects at the blacksmith shop, if that's going to make the list. I live in this district. I live off of Fort Palm Boulevard. I also served on the Springs School Board for 9 years. The last 2 is the board president, and I was actually on the board president when we made the Safe Routes to School application. It only took 8 years to get the sidewalks in. But I will say part of that, when we used to talk about it, is that the school only buses 1 mile out from, the walking to school. So kids that live on Fort Palm Boulevard and live north of the school on Springs Fireplace Road have to walk, bike, or their parents drive them to school. And I know parents are anxious to have their kids walk or ride their bike down Fort Palm Boulevard and down Springs Fireplace Road. If you live south and west of, by School Street and Gardner's Avenue, Springs Fireplace Road has sidewalks on both sides of the street. Gardner's Avenue has a sidewalk. Fort Palm Boulevard doesn't have a sidewalk, and folks are walking it all the time, whether it's for exercise, whether it's to get to the school, whether in the old days it was to get to the bus. Now we have, the transit where they come to your house. But, we need to make our roads and Springs, and I know this is where this came from the Springs CAC, which we've heard for years, our roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists. So, and I know you've got that on here, Sam. So it's just critical to drive that point home. The other thing is, on the west end of Fort Palm Boulevard, there's a restaurant, a tavern, and a coffee shop that, is very popular. And the parking there can be, a bit of a nightmare. People parking on both sides of the street, tires on the asphalt. And so anything we can do to provide safety up there, if that could be looked at in this plan. And then we also Ian mentioned parking in the historic district. When there's a farmer's market in town, particularly on a holiday weekend, and there's also a Quicksilver sale at the Springs Presbyterian Church, I take my heart in my hands when I drive through there and I'm texting the chief saying this is, can be very dangerous. People walking, cars on both sides of the street. We worry about emergency vehicles being able to get down the street when there's a lot of activity in the historic district at Ashwell Hall and the church and the library and the blacksmith shop. So I know when we were looking at the library a couple of years ago, working with Drew Bennett, we were looking at there were ways to create additional parking. I mean, this would be the perfect project to do that under. So I think, hopefully you're gonna have a list a mile long of potential projects to bolster our case to the state to grant us funding to make these improvements. So, and I know you're working on a tight timetable. I appreciate the folks that have signed up and committed to work on this committee. And, I'm sure it'll be a very robust and thorough grant application. And thank you in advance for that, Sam and Ian.
If I could just very, very quickly, Nancy Carney, the superintendent of Springs, was actually at the last spring CAC meeting giving a presentation. I'll talk about my liaison report a little bit, and that's when I was also talking about this. So we are in communication, and all those other groups that you mentioned, even Mr. Buddha, I guess a group in himself, are aware of this. So we have made the appeal, and I appreciate anybody else who has other, ideas of who can get the word out. And specific projects, we are talking with an engineer who helped us with the blacksmith shop, the current project. For future projects, we were already talking about things that needed to be done there. And the idea that there now might be funding for that makes those projects much, much easier. The Springs Library windows, Ashwell Hall has some very specific projects. So all great ideas. We're also talking with representatives from the church. We'll continue to sort of, put our feelers out, our tentacles out as far as we can. But just wanted to say that we are pursuing all of those things.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Sam.
Okay, all right, thank you all.
Thanks, Patrick.